How are you today, Mary?
I could go for a bit of excitement.
Yeah? Okay. I may have something for you.
It will be over soon.
Hey guys, Centurion here. Welcome to ESO Vault. I'm here with Miri Alendis in a new heavy attack Necro build. I didn't really intend to do another Necro video so soon, even though I've been playing my Necro a lot lately. But when I looked at my previous heavy attack Necro, I saw that the build wasn't going to work anymore. As a matter of fact, one of the skills in the build didn't even exist. The Magicomorph of Blast Bones had gotten the axe. So today I'm revisiting my heavy attack Oaken Soul Necro with a new version. If that sounds good to you guys, then stick around.
Hope we find something interesting today.
What could be more interesting than adventuring in the Deadlands with this one? That was terrible. Sorry. Let's look at the character sheet. So this character on my live account is now a Khajiit. I haven't had a Khajiit until now because initially I just wasn't interested in them. But they've grown on me to the point that I was obsessed with having one, and I finally changed my Necro from Nord to Khajiit. Don't worry, I still have a Nord. I haven't completely betrayed them. Anyway, Khajiit have bonuses to health, magicka, and stamina, and recovery bonuses for all three of those as well. They also have a 12% bonus to their critical damage modifier. And for the new players, this increases the amount of damage critical hits do. Don't confuse that with critical chance. That bonus to critical damage is what makes Khajiit a top damage dealer race for stamina or magicka builds. I'll put the stamina tier list up. Play the race you want to play though, regardless of where they are in the tier list. I didn't change my character's race because Khajiit are better damage dealers than Nords. I changed because I really wanted to play a Khajiit. I noticed as I was doing this that I've arrived at 2,222 champion points. And no, I'm not going to go out and buy a lottery ticket or anything. I can assure you without a doubt that this hasn't been lucky for me so far. My buff food on this character right now is a single stat food that just buffs stamina. That's basically a Parse food. In most content, I like a bi-stat food that buffs stamina and health. And why not, since I can get 5,000 more points of health and only give up 1,000 points of stamina. I'm using the Thief Mundus Stone as usual, and that increases my chances of a critical hit. I can't resist continuing my crusade against the Lover Mundus here. You can take the Lover if you're never going to group with other players, but my builds are designed for the 4-player dungeons. And did you know that the second you get a real tank in your group, that any penetration beyond 4,000 points is too much? And that's because that tank is going to bring around 14,000 points of penetration to the fight themselves. With the Divine's trait, the Lover gives you over 4,000 points, so some of the Lover Mundus will already be wasted. Depending on what sets that tank is wearing, that entire bonus to penetration from the Lover may be wasted. Don't pick the Lover, use the Thief. Alright, let's move on. Up top I have all 64 points in stamina, and when we get to the skills you'll see why. With hybridization having been in the game for almost 3 years, there really isn't any such thing as a pure magicka or stamina build anymore. So don't be surprised by some of my builds that to you may seem oddly spec'd. I promise there's a good reason for it. So anyway, I wind up with 21,000 points of health and 31,000 points of stamina here. Remember now that that's with a Parse food. All three of my recovery numbers are bunched right together. I don't have much sustain, but I don't need it on a heavy attack build. And if I'm doing something where I'm going to have to be doing a lot of dodge rolling and blocking, I can easily change my buff food to one with stamina recovery. And that's one of the reasons I spec'd into stamina here. Then, when I need to buff that, it works perfectly with the build. Weapon damage is at 4,300 and crit is at 48%. A funny thing happened on the way to the Deadlands. I was beginning to put the clips for this video together and I realized the whole time I was working on the build I had the wrong Mundus Stone. I had the Serpent still from running the archive, so I did all this work on the build without the Thief and I was pretty satisfied with the results. When I actually switched to the Thief finally, the results were even better. I'm going to skip penetration because I already gave my speech. Resistances are high for a damage dealer because this is an Oaken Soul build and that gives me major resolve at all times. Crit resistance is a stat that I don't talk about because monsters don't crit. Only players can crit, so worry about crit resistance on your PvP builds. Okay, that's a wrap for the character sheet. Ready-made campsites are always handy. I noticed it didn't work out too well for this Argonian, though.
Change of plans?
Maybe. I want to look at my skills as long as we're here. Like I said at the beginning, this is a heavy attack build, and that means no light attack weaving. What I have to do here is actually the opposite. Instead of weaving in light attacks between skills, I'm going to be weaving skills in between my heavy attacks. I do that by pressing a skill button while I'm holding heavy attack, and when that heavy attack is finished, the skill will fire off automatically. I don't let go of that heavy attack button. I just keep queuing skills, one for each heavy attack. The computer will handle the timing. Before I start my heavy attacks though, I'm going to use a few skills. First, I'll summon the Skeletal Archer. This Grave Lord skill gives me major brutality and sorcery and attacks the nearest enemy with damage that increases while the skill is active. Now I'm going to send a Blighted Blast Bones on its way toward my enemy. That's another skill from the Grave Lord skill line. After reaching its target, the Blast Bones will explode, doing disease damage to all enemies in the area. Now I use Unnerving Boneyard, which reduces the armor of enemies in its area by 5,000 points and applies minor vulnerability, increasing their damage taken by 5%. The last skill I use before I start my heavy attacks is Ruinous Scythe, and this is the only skill on my bar that isn't from the Grave Lord skill line. This Bone Tyrant skill does bleed damage to enemies in front of me and heals me based on the number of enemies hit. More importantly though, it causes enemies to be off balance for 7 seconds. Off balance causes enemies to take 70% more damage from heavy attacks, and it's always a key element of heavy attack builds. After being off balance for 7 seconds, enemies will be immune to off balance for 15 seconds. Okay, so my damage over time skills are up and running, and my enemy has major breach from the Boneyard and they're off balance. Time to start holding down my heavy attack button, and I don't let go. During this first heavy attack, I'm going to queue up another Blast Bones, and then I'm going to queue up the Scythe during the heavy attack after that. I'll alternate between Blast Bones and the Scythe, and I'll refresh the Skeletal Archer and the Boneyard if they run out. But I never let go of that heavy attack button. I just queue up the skills like I talked about a minute ago. It's important to keep the hammer down on heavy attacks because they're doing most of the work here. I try to use a Blast Bones every other attack because it's my most damaging skill. Feel free to skip the Scythe if another skill needs refreshing. Remember that whatever you're fighting will be immune to off balance 2/3 of the time anyway. Of course, if you need a heal, feel free to use the Scythe whenever. There are 2 skills left on my bar that I haven't talked about. I have the Detonating Siphon slotted for a passive increase to damage. I get 3% more damage just for slotting it. Also, it's from the Grave Lord skill line. More on that in a minute. My ultimate is the Glacial Colossus. This giant pulverizes enemies in the target area, doing frost damage, and applies major vulnerability for 17 seconds. Major vulnerability increases my damage and the damage of everyone I'm grouped with by 10%. Okay, that's it for the skills. Let's see them in action. Clean up and frozen foods. Dad jokes. Sorry, I just can't help myself. So the build did 48,000 points of damage per second, and that's right there with the sorcerer builds I just did, so I'm pretty happy with that. 67% of the damage came from heavy attacks, so don't let go of that button. Blast Bones came in a distant but respectable second with almost 9%, so I try to make that every other cast when I'm doing my rotation. I know what you're thinking. You're looking at the crit percentages on the top attacks and thinking I got awfully lucky here. Not really. This is what you're going to see with this build. The crit percentages are going to be over the average for the build, substantially over. That's because I have 5 Grave Lord abilities slotted. Thanks to the Death Knell passive, I get 10% extra crit chance for each one when my enemy is under 25% health. So my crit chance goes to 90% at the end of every fight, and that's what skews the numbers higher. Okay, let's move on.
You don't come by those too often.
Time for a gear check. I almost hate to say it, but I don't have any surprises for you in the gear section. As a matter of fact, I'm wearing the same gear I wear in pretty much every heavy attack build. I did try one of the new sets, however, and that's Theriker's Strike. I can't say that I recommend that set though. I didn't find it to be as good as other sets that are typically used for heavy attack builds. If you have to go the crafted route, I would use Order's Wrath. You can use a lot of other sets for the second set, but the must-have first set is the 5-piece Sergeant's Mail set. No other set comes close to buffing heavy attacks like this set. I have a Sergeant's Mail lightning staff in the precise trait, and I have a flame damage glyph on it. Typically the glyph is shock damage in heavy attack builds, but I'm not using this to get off balance, so I can run whatever I want here, and I want to get fire damage into the build. Sergeant's Mail comes from the Wayrest Sewers dungeon, as does the next piece of gear I'm wearing. I have on Slimecraw arm cops, and you have to go with the mythic shoulder piece to get a bigger one-piece crit bonus than this. You can wear either the helm or the shoulder like I did here, it doesn't matter. The second 5-piece set I'm wearing is the Stormmaster set, and that's from Tempest Island. The only other easy to get 5-piece set that I ever found to equal Stormmaster is Deadly Strike. After that I would choose Noble Duelist. If you can't get that, then Order's Wrath. If you're new to the game, start working on your crafting skills right away, so when it comes time to gear your character, you can use a transmute station to get your gear in the right traits. You don't want to have to try to go old school and farm the right traits, trust me. The final piece of gear is another must-have piece. You'll need to level the Antiquity skill line so you can get the Oaken Soul Ring. 1-bar heavy attack builds won't work without it. The Oaken Soul Ring provides a lot of buffs, including Empower, which increases the damage of my heavy attacks by 70%. All my body pieces here are medium weight except for the Sergeant's Helm, which is heavy. The traits are all divines. My jewelry is bloodthirsty with weapon damage enchantments. Taking a quick look at champion points, the blue slottables are Fighting Finesse, Deadly Aim, Thaumaturge, and Weapons Expert. And it's Weapons Expert that you always need in a heavy attack build because that buffs the damage of your heavy attacks by 20%. And that's it for the build. How's our partnership working for you, Miri?
I don't regret throwing my lot in with you, if that's what you're asking. There aren't many adventurers I'm willing to partner up with again and again, but you keep proving yourself useful. And pretty nice.
Okay, great. Well guys, that's it for today's heavy attack Necro build. I'm Centurion and you've been watching ESO Vault. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, help me out by putting a like on it. If you'd like to see more content like this, please consider subscribing to the channel if you're not already subscribed. The end of the video has the usual fashion show followed by a fight. Stick around if you want to see that stuff. Thanks for watching. Have a great day and enjoy your adventures in Tamriel.
Mighty brave!